Welcome back to the Limitless Brave Show. And today with me, I have Alan Huynh, who has fundraised over $300,000 for juvenile diabetes research while in high school, funded major infrastructure projects before graduating college, impressive, and opened and started your own business when you weren't ready for it. Story of my life.
Yep.
Also maintained a competitive Brazilian jiu-jitsu and amateur boxing schedule while working 80 hours a week.
Yep.
How in the hell do you do that? And then, guys, you're going to like this one. Transitioned a lifestyle brand and took it public. And that lifestyle brand was PLAYBOY.
Yep.
Nice, man. Welcome.
Thanks. This is awesome. Super happy to be here.
Quite a list of accomplishments.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is super impressive. 300 grand in high school.
Mhm.
How in the world did you do that?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you just got to put yourself out there. And so I grew a little bit of background. So I was born down here in SoCal, moved to Portland, Oregon, really early on. And then in middle school, got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And at this point, it's like you're in middle school. You don't really know much about yourself, right? It's like you're trying to figure out how to open your locker, your combo lock, right? And so this just was like say it's like a shocking, life-altering event is fair, but it downplays it for me even more because my parents were immigrated, came over here in America, first generation, and
What nationality?
Vietnamese.
Vietnamese. Nice. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, they were, they were very assimilated, but still, right? It's like when you get type 1 diabetes, the first thing is like, hey, you got to actually think about all the food you put into you. And it's like, if you know any Southeast Asian families, tons of rice,
Yep.
right? And as you know, rice, tons of carbs, right? So it's like culture shock in the sense of you have these nurses and everyone telling my parents yeah, so they can't the daily diet, that's got to change. You can't be really eating bowls of rice anymore. And it's like my parents are just like, well, what do we eat then? Right? It's
Yep.
it's like they do the whole steak and potatoes and burgers and stuff, but they're just kind of but rice, there's always room for rice. And it was quite formative because it put me in a position really early on of hey, sometimes your life is just gonna freaking pivot.
Yeah.
And pivot in a cultural sense, pivot in an identity sense, pivot in a habit sense. And so that was a very, I guess, reaffirming part of growing up. It was that day. I still remember it. It's 1302. It's my my second birthday, right? Because essentially it changed everything in my family dynamic, from the way we ate to the way we had to get things done, to how we considered things. It forced and again, my parents were very assimilated, but it made them even more Western, right? Because all of a sudden now it's oh, you are looking at nutrition labels. Oh, you now are having to, internalize what you're putting into your body. You have to start regular eating habits. I don't know if you have any, CBT is a really real thing, right? We're late for a lot of things, including meals. So you'll go really late, right?
Yep.
And so all of a sudden I had to change because now I'm injecting myself with insulin, and it's hey, now it's about precision. It's about timing.
Yep.
And so yeah, that happened. And then
Real quickly, what was going on for you personally when that diagnosis came out?
So it was really odd. So I'm a pretty introverted person. I realized that you've got to be somewhat extroverted. So just really early on tried to be comfortable putting myself out there. And so I did musical theater. I did drama. I was playing sports. all of that stuff, but it was just sort of like going into like a real discomfort zone, right? And a lot of it is like, I really thank a lot of the teachers and coaches and stuff that I had that were like, oh yeah, like you can actually hold a tune, like you actually kind of know what singing is, like you know what notes are, like you should try this. It's like you actually can say big words, like you know what these big words mean. You know, it's like stuff that you take for granted now, but it's like, yeah, I guess if I was like a middle school teacher and I'm trying to get kids to do theater or whatever, you're just like, yeah, like, can this person talk? Yeah, that's important. Okay. Like, can they hit the right note? Like, are they pitchy? Do they know when they're pitchy? Do they know how to recover? It's like, you know, if they don't have to teach it and you kind of got it a little bit, they're going to be like, you should, like, we need you to do this. So a lot of like affirmation to go through and try different things and reaffirmation, right? And it's very different than like playing sports, because like early on, I think it's important to play sports to understand the ideas of how to win graciously, how to lose, how to grow, how to bounce back, you know, understanding what points in games are and what it looks like. But drama, being in front of people, is totally different, because there is no like external winning or losing. Because like half the time the audience doesn't know what's supposed to happen. And if they did know what's supposed to happen, if they get surprised, it's actually a good thing. So you actually have to build in. And I think that experience there sort of made me a lot more comfortable being an analytical person working in lots of creative spaces, to be like, yeah, a lot of times the best stuff that comes from creative is never intentioned. You just have to like leave a lot of room for it. And I think you can even see that in the best operating businesses in the world on the outside. And if you want to do revisionist history, it's like, oh, that worked, that worked, that worked. The Harvard Business Review or the Harvard Business Case Study is like this, then this, then this, but that's never really how it happens, right?
Exactly.
So you got to be comfortable to actually leave space. And so, you know, drama, theater, like that kind of taught me that. And I'm happy I did it when I did it, because like always I didn't want to do it later on. But yeah, that was like very, very formative. And so, you know, I'm going through and I look a certain way, and then all of a sudden I drop a ton of weight. And I was just like, whoa, is this what puberty is? And then my brother was like, that wasn't what puberty was for me, but like, I don't know, like maybe. And my dad was just like, yeah, I guess puberty comes in all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
But I just dropped a ton of weight because, you know, it was essentially like my insulin wasn't working anymore, and I was just peeing out like all the fat in me. So, you know, I think I was like probably like 130 pounds at the time. I dropped down to like 110.
Wow.
And it's like, you know, I think I was like a 5'5" kid, 5'4" kid, not really a tall guy to begin with, but it was just like, you know, like it was noticeable. And that was like essentially like what brought me into the doctors. And, you know, I was just kind of like, oh man, I can't wait for, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas and just eating my face off, and I'm gonna gain all this weight back. And instead I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel even worse like every time. But yeah, that's what brought me in. And state of mind wise, like I was just confused. It was just like, I thought I was going through puberty, like from a social perspective, like I maybe understanding who I was perspective was like never been better. And then boom, like, hey, your entire lifestyle has to change now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a brutal recovery for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It happens in business all the time. It's happened to me recently on the business side of the house. We have to be ready for these blindsided events or blindsiding events. And in those moments, we have to make that choice, you know, are we going to move forward? Or are we going to be a victim of this forever?
Yeah. And I don't want to underplay, like, I think the importance, and I think we, you know, in Western society, a lot of like the stories and tales, you know, I love them to death. But I think the interesting part about that is like oftentimes people underplay the impact of family and the team and the people you surround yourself with to really bounce back. And it's like everyone talks about Luke Skywalker, but like everybody forgets the fact that like Luke Skywalker didn't defeat the Empire. It was like Luke and Han and Chewie. Like it was all those people together. Like that's actually why it worked. But everyone's always like the hero's journey. Oh, it's like Luke Skywalker. It's like, if that's the only thing you're seeing from Star Wars, like you're missing the plot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to get anywhere, I just had a conversation with one of my clients the other day. He wants to do a lot of stuff on his own. Well, that's admirable. If you want to be great, you need a team behind you.
Yeah.
You know, I know you know this, and it starts with family. It starts there, and then goes into the business world and goes into the social world with our friend group and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Super important to have a team behind you.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like I can't thank my family enough. Because again, I mean, I think it was, you probably asked my mom and dad, like me getting diabetes was probably more like jarring for them than it was for me, because like they essentially, like, you know, they're in their 40s, 50s, however old they were at the time. It's like all of a sudden you're telling a 50-year-old, hey, you got to change your lifestyle because like your kid is going to die if you don't. So like talk about like pressure. And then it's like there's no right or wrong, right? It's like, well, you know, it's like, well, how do I know if I'm doing it right? Well, if your kid stays out of the hospital, it's like, oh.
Great advice.
Right?
Well, if he's not here anymore,
Yeah.
you're doing a good job.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, like that was probably more, I in hindsight, it's like the resilience they had, right, allowed me to have the ability to like bounce back from that and not have it be an anchor, but instead like a milestone in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome, man. Did you have to get an insulin pump at that point?
No, so a lot of people don't use insulin pumps, but we're trying to get more people on them. So I was on needles at first. So your first full year is essentially you're on needles, and it's like I hate. That's why I hate needles now. But like I have no problem like, you know, poking myself. But yeah, I got on an insulin pump the year after, and that was just to be able to like do sports and everything. Because back then, and we can spend hours talking about like the changing world of diabetes and medication and healthcare. But the short version of it was, at that time, it was harder. I think doctors, for the most part, know people are lazy and they won't follow through.
Yeah.
So you don't really want to give someone, especially someone new, too much precision. Because if you give them a treatment plan that requires too much precision, they'll probably screw up and they will go back into the hospital. So what they do is they give you this thing called NPH. And essentially this was like one of the first insulins. And the way it works is that it's like, I think it was like based off of pig insulin, but like your blood sugar will spike in 6 hours, no matter what. So if it spikes, like, it's not like you're going to just fall flat on your face. It's like you start feeling it and then you just got to eat food. So it's like if the doctor gives you insulin that's not as reactive, then when you eat, it's like, okay, just remember in 6 hours, like you got to eat food. Like you got to put something in you. It could be 30 carbs, whatever it is. And so that type of a treatment was easier for kids, especially because you're able to just like, if I feel bad, I eat food, versus like, I feel bad, oh, I need to inject something else, or, oh, I need to like take this pill to like keep it balanced, right? Because like, again, you're like a kid. I wasn't like a little kid, but like still a kid. So once you prove that you could do that, and you prove that you know how to count carbs, and you prove that like you understand like what a basal is versus a bolus, which, you know, is odd, right? Because like that played into many other parts of my life. But you could then get a pump. And so that point, I was like, I worked really hard to be like, okay, like I understand diabetes, I understand every bit of it, so I could get an insulin pump. Because if you have an insulin pump, you kind of do whatever you want. Like you can eat when you want, you can like not eat when you don't want. And that was like, you know, like outside of driving, right? Like for most kids, like that's the most freeing feeling in the world, especially when you're used to the point of like shoving, you know, a sandwich in your face every 3 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Whether you want to or not.
Yeah. What's great for me is like I was able to bulk up, like, you know, talking about like how to bulk up finally, like that was it. So, but yeah.
Hey, Dave here with the Limitless Brave Show. I hope you've been enjoying the show as much as I have been enjoying making it for you. And I want to introduce our next guest. And this guest is doing some amazing stuff in the world. Please welcome Woobies. Now, I've recently partnered with this company because of their incredible mission. Their mission is to put a pair of Woobies on every homeless vet's feet. That's a huge mission, and it's one I can get behind. So guys, if you go and purchase a pair of Woobies, a homeless vet's gonna get a pair of shoes for free. And we need to help out our vets because they put their life on the line so that we can live in this incredible country. And so I was very curious about this company. I flew down to Dallas, Texas, where their headquarters is. I spent the day with the CEO, and let me tell you, these guys are on point. And not only that, it's a veteran-owned company. So it's veterans helping veterans. What an awesome mission. So these are the Mod 2s, and this is the high top version. They also make a low top version. These shoes can be worn on land and in the water. This is the official shoe of Naval Special Operations Dive School. Guys, if Special Operations is using this shoe, you can too. And so I took my whoobies to New York City recently, to Washington, D.C., and around Los Angeles. And let me tell you, they were comfortable right out of the box and something that I enjoyed wearing. They have a true paracord shoelace and a certified non-slip sole. So if you need a certified non-slip sole for your work, these are the shoes. And this is a canvas upper, and it breathes and dries really quick. So if you're in and out of the water, like I am when I'm diving, these things are awesome. They have a lot of different colorways for you to check out. So please go support their mission at whoobies.com. Were you born here?
Yeah, I was born in California, and then
Okay.
parents moved up to Portland.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if you were born here or not, but I wanted to double check on that because I had questions if you weren't.
Oh yeah, I would too.
So all that stuff's going on. When does the fundraise come in for juvenile diabetes?
Yeah, so essentially just you kind of fall into it, right? And I think a lot of it in life is like it's because of the things you do and puts you into positions. And then I think as you get put into positions, it's really about taking the things you can do, the things you know, right? And really looking at them as tools and seeing, deciding like what you want to build with it. And so, I was this model diabetic kid for the Northwest area because they were just like, wow, this kid like came in, like I was really sick. Like I was ICU, like,
Oh, wow.
like really sick because I had diabetes for a month and didn't do anything about it because I didn't know. I thought I was going through puberty. So, like I remember like the doctor when my parents came in, like they were just like, oh yeah, like you actually like they weren't able to be with me the first like couple hours.
Wow.
Because like there was like, oh yeah, like he's in that ward, right?
Wow.
So yeah, it's like one of those things in hindsight. So that a lot of these people were just like, oh well, and also like the resistance because of like rice diet, like there's just some stuff, right? Like these people have seen it enough where they're like, oh, I don't know if this person's gonna be able to like really make the transition. Not only did I make the transition, I smashed it out the park. It was like a home run, right? Like I did it, like I changed, like my family and myself changed everything in a year. And so this clinic was like, wow, this is amazing. And it was also really beneficial because like my parents were immigrants. So, like from a cultural sense, very sensitive. Second, I was able to really pick up the basics like, hey, this is what a basal is, and this is what a bolus is, and this is why this is what you do. Here's how you count carbs. And so it was interesting because like early on, they try to do these peer groups. So like, oh, like other newly diagnosed kids, we would have the parents meet together so they could share tips and tricks and those things. And like the kids can like see other kids with diabetes.
Yeah.
And so we went to a couple of these and, my parents are really shy people. So they weren't really saying anything, but like the nurses and the educators and the endocrinologists, they were like, there would be a lot of like these Hispanic families, or these, Portland, Oregon at that time was just like, we had tons of cultures, like Cambodian families, Laotian families, Ukrainian families, just like everybody was just kind of like moving there.
Just total melting pot.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and a lot of these kids were getting diabetes. And there's like some interesting facts about that for like the Northwest area that some epidemiologists have done.
Interesting.
Yeah, there was something going on in the area where like the occurrence rate of juvenile diabetes is higher than like other parts of America.
Really?
And isolated. Yeah.
What? Wow.
Yeah. So again, people don't really know how it's an autoimmune disease. So one day your immune system decides to attack itself.
Yeah.
They don't really know what triggers it, but it's like, oh, like there may be something like regional because like there is a significant enough trend, right? That like they've never really, at least like I haven't followed up on it, but I don't think they've ever like figured anything out about it. There's just like a strong correlation. And so I bring that up because there was a lot of these families who were first generation that were having to deal with all these lifestyle changes and they were having a hard time. they didn't really know what to do. And so these nurses and educators, they were like, well, we don't know what that family did. That family turned it around. And so we need to have that family talk to these other families.
Meaning your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, but my parents are really shy. So like they weren't saying anything. And so these other families would be like, oh, like, you know, and so I'd be kind of like sitting there and I'd like be talking to these kids. And, you know, it's like, I'm just kind of like, I guess at the time appalled at like some of the things they were doing. Like I was like, oh, you're going to feel like shit pretty soon. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like I was like, oh, I see what you're doing. Like if you feel the way I feel, like if you're doing that right now, like that's not going to be good. Like you're going to feel really bad in the next like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And you know, I like, again, I was just eager and naive. So I like would tell the educator, I was like, oh, you know, like I saw so-and-so, like, you know, like that person's like, you know, like she's actually eating the example snacks that we're doing. Like you're not supposed to eat it because like I don't think she probably like bolused correctly. And like if she did eat it, she's like on an NPH unless she's like on a really high dose. So like these nurses were like, how the heck do you know this? Right. And so they were just like, oh, like there's something there. And so that led to like a couple profiles. And then afterwards, like they were just like, hey, it was in the summer. It was like, when you have free time, do you want to just maybe come in and like maybe talk to some families or like just to kind of see if there's anything? And I was like, sure, like love to help. And then that led me to this sort of like weird scenario where I was like, I would just come in, like I would come in 3 times a week. Or whenever they would have a new diagnosed patient, they would like call me. They'd be like, oh, hey, can you like come by the hospital and talk to this family?
And how old were you at this point?
Oh, I don't know. I think I was like 14, 15 maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, like life just kind of throws you into like some
Yeah.
scenarios. And so that happened. And then I talked to one of these families and I didn't realize that this family was like pretty well connected. And so this family had I think the dad was pretty big time. Was like, oh, like I want to write a check to like do this stuff. So he was like researching like where to write a check. And then he wrote a check to the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. And so he wrote a check to them and they were like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of money. And I actually don't even know how much it was, but like it was enough where they were like, oh, interesting. It's like, well, like, you know, what made you want to do this? And he was like, yeah, well, you know, like the kind of like level of care we got in the hospital and all this stuff, like it was great. And then you had that guy come and they were just like, what? No, like, wait, like what guy? And they were like, oh, the guy, like the Asian kid, like came in, like explained everything to like me and my wife. And like, you know, it's like, yeah, we're gonna like, we get it. Like, we understand, like, it's actually like, and I believe they were really religious because they're like, oh, this is like a good thing because it's gonna bring us together. Like, we're gonna make sure we eat dinner together. Like, it's gonna be set time and all these things. And like, JDRF was just like, we don't know who this person is. Like, who is this person? So then they made some phone calls. And then again, like I wasn't listed in anything. Like I was not like an employee or anything.
Yeah.
So like they called like the main nurse people at the clinic. Clinic's like, we don't know anything. Like maybe there was like, you should call someone at the hospital. Maybe the hospital just like happened to have someone. So there was like, I guess like this 3-month period where like nobody really knew like who I was.
Who you were.
Yeah. If they were just kind of like
the elusive Alan diabetes educator.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was until the summer. And they were doing an event at the clinic. And then I happened to be in that day. And they were just like, oh, they're like, are you the person that comes in and talks to like the families? And I was like, oh, I do that sometimes. Like, again, I was just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then they were just like, huh, did you happen to like, how long have you been doing this for? I was like, oh, I've been doing this for a while. Like, I was like, I've been doing this at least like 2 years. And they're just like, oh, we need to talk. And so at this point, like I was very naive to a lot of this.
Sure.
And my parents, like my mom, she like worked in banking. So she had somewhat of an idea, but you know, it's like last thing on her mind. So like I told her, I was like, oh, I got to go to Lake Oswego to like meet with this nonprofit. My dad was just like, do you need a ride? And then I was like, yeah, I guess so. I was like, I don't know where Lake Oswego is. And he was like, that's kind of far from like Portland. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Like, can you give me a ride? He's like, all right. And then my mom is like, wait a minute, like where are you taking your son? Like, what's going on? Like, and I was like, oh, it's like with the clinic. And then my mom was like, oh, it's with the clinic. Okay. And my dad was like, oh, it's with the clinic. Okay. Like, it was just kind of like, maybe they're doing something. So he has like no idea. Like, he goes, just like drops me off, thinks like I'm going to go into like a clinic down there, and, he like gets a coffee or something. But I like go in there, and it's like, there's like a spread. There's like a presentation. Like, the executive director's there. She's like sitting down, and she's like, oh my gosh, it's so great to meet you. She's like, do you have a, like, how'd you get here? I was like, oh, my dad dropped me off. I was like, can your dad like come back? Like, can he be in here? At the time I didn't like have a cell phone or anything.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know. I told him to like pick me up in like an hour. Like, so I'm trying to make here in an hour. And they were like, oh, well, okay, like, let's make sure he comes in like at the hour mark. And so they kind of tell me like, hey, like right now they're going through, they're trying to do a big drive. They're trying to like raise all this money, and they've hit a wall. And
Did you know what the wall was at that point?
no. Okay. I was just kind of like, oh, like, well, I know nonprofits make no money. Like, I saw the Feed the Children, like, campaigns, right? I was just like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. They have for diabetes, right? Yeah, they told me, it's like, so they have this goal, and this executive director was new. She started like 6 months ago. And she was like, yeah, it was like really weird because like, like for like, I was like 3 months in, and suddenly we got like this big check. And like this big check was like, the person was like, very grateful, was like, I understand diabetes so well. They had said that you were there. Oh, I forgot this little part. I was wearing a JDRF shirt because like I knew of the JDRF, and I was like, I should probably wear something like so when I walk around this hospital, people don't think I'm like a creeper. So I like wore the diabetes shirt, right? And so this guy was just like, oh, like JDRF, and decided to talk to me about it. So like that's what I did. So went through there, did that, and that's when I was able to really go through, and they were just like, so we need help fundraising. Like, these are the things we need help with. And they were like, so you somehow got somebody to give us money. You should know that's pretty hard, but like you somehow did it. And so we're curious if you want to keep on doing it. And I was like, sure. Like, I'm a diabetic. This is great. Like, I want to do what I can for diabetes. And so, yeah, like they were just like, okay. So they gave me sort of like a rudimentary thing of what they were doing. Like, there was like, we have these fundraisers, we have these auction dinners, we have these things. They were like, we would like you to start showing up to this. I was like, sure. And then they were like, yeah, and it's like, it'd be great if you could share your story. It'd be great if like we could have you talk about things. I was like, sure. So, it's like, I get to like my first auction dinner, and I'm just like, so what am I supposed to do? They're like, oh, well, like just go through and mingle. But we're going to ask you to come up and like read a speech, just so that people know like, hey, like what does like, so people can see what like someone who lives with diabetes looks like and what they can do. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Okay. So, I'm like kind of up there, and I see all these people who look a lot more serious. Like, they were setting up, they were like running around like in their heels while like wearing their like, formal wear and like doing the stuff. And I was like, hey, so like, how does this, like, how, if this goes well, how does that look like? Like, what does this all do? And she was like, oh, well, like someone's gonna like, write big checks. So like the goal of this entire dinner is like to have people write checks. And I was just in my mind, I was like, writing checks, like, how does that even look like? I was like, well, what are they writing checks for? And they were like, oh, there's stuff that they auction on. But like, some people don't like want the stuff here, but like we still want everyone to write a check. Like, and I think they told me, it was like, yeah, like the cost to go to this dinner was like, at the time it was like, like $800 or something. And I was like, it costs $800 to go to this dinner? I was like, you're gonna be kidding me. And she was like, yeah, so like everyone's kind of paid there, but like we want everyone to like donate. We want people to like, and if they can't donate a big check, it's like, they should donate like a recurring. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I go up on stage, and I'm telling my story, and I just kind of ad-lib it. I'm just kind of like, and if you really want to help people like me and have everyone like, have a story like I do, we really need your help, and really need you to like write a check, because like that's what they told me to say.
Nice.
And I was like, yeah. And I was like, and like there's no amount too big or small. And I know, I was like, I know, and I was like, I know this dinner costs $800. Like, I was like, I'm shocked. I'm a kid from like, Portland.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can't write like an $800 check, but I'm gonna give $5. Like I'm writing like I have like $5. Like I'm donating it here. And so I was like, you know, I hope more people can like join me. And that just kicked it off.
Dave here with the Limitless Brave Show. And gentlemen, this one's for you. Are you struggling with your dating life or maybe your relationships? Possibly the marriage is on the rocks. Maybe you're having a difficult time making money. What about your health? Is that good or is it in poor repair? And maybe you've tried everything you know how to do to climb that corporate ladder, but you're still not getting anywhere. Or if you're finished with the corporate world, you've been hesitant on starting that new business. Or maybe you just do not feel confident taking on one of the most unique roles we have as men, and that is being the protector. Guys, for the past 15 years as my full-time career, I've been coaching men all over the world on those topics and how to rise above everything that's holding them back to get that amazing dream life. I've been helping men understand the art of living masculine for a very long time, and I would love to help you. I have a very simple, nurturing, zero to hero philosophy when it comes to working with me. It's not anything difficult. It's not anything hard. It's not abusive. It's just common knowledge that I love to share with men to get their minds switched on in the right direction so that they can go out and live an amazing life that every man should. If you want to know more about this, check me out at limitlessbrave.com. Get signed up to my email list, and we'll be in touch.
Then all of a sudden, like people were like, "Oh my gosh!" And then like the executive director, the JDR, like everyone's just like, "Holy cow!" Like what just happened?
That is awesome, man. I can only imagine that speech. I can like see young Alan sitting in up on stage doing his thing, just being totally innocent and real with people, and sounds like it sparked a firestorm in a positive way.
Yeah, so like that dinner like went through, and you know, like that created like, I don't know, like how much that fundraised. And then they were like, oh, so we do these like, you know, once a year. And then they were like, oh, and we do this other thing where it's like, you know, it's like walkathons, things like that. And I was like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I was like, I'm gonna get everybody in my network. Like, so I'm like almost like a senior. I was going into it, and I was like kind of bored and like screwing around with things. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get everyone I know. I'm gonna get all the teachers. I'm gonna get all my friends, all the parents of my friends, everyone I know. I'm gonna literally ask everybody for some money, and I'm gonna make sure that like my team wins the fundraiser for this, however I can. And I was determined.
I love the competitive spirit.
So yeah, then I asked. I was like, well, like what number would win? They're like, oh, like, you know, if you can get 300,000, like that'd be pretty good, because they were like, oh yeah, like, you know, like Nike will, you know, have a team and they'll drop like, you know, like they're gonna donate like at least 50,000, like, because they're corporate, right? Like that goes in no matter what. And I was like, whoa, like I was like, man, like I was thinking like it might be like 20,000. Like I was like 300,000. I was like, damn, that's like a lot of money. Yeah. And I was like applying to colleges at the time. I was like, whoa, like that's like more than tuition. So yeah, it's like I kind of go through and I'm like, well, how do I get money? And then I started asking people, and they're like, oh, like, you know, it's first like, oh, like my husband does this thing at his work, and like, oh yeah, like they'd be more than happy to throw some dollars in. And then I was like, oh, okay. And they'd be like, so I was like, so what I gotta do? I was like, oh, you gotta go meet them. I was like, okay. So go and I meet them, and I'm just like, yeah, like this is really cool. I'm a nerd. I love LSI. This is really cool. Like, you know, this is, I was like, oh, like, you're like a really good guy. There's like, yeah, like, here's a $5,000, like, you know, like donation. And what was this, like, all these little things added up. Like I went to like the dentist clinic. I was like, hey, like I'm, you know, with this, they were like, oh, cool. Like they threw some in. And so before I knew it, like, and this was like the powerful thing was I was like, you know, I was able to tell the kids at my high school, I was like, oh yeah, so we've already raised, like, I think it was like when we raised past $100,000, I was like, hey, we raised over $100,000, like from like local businesses and like, you know, some of your parents and everybody. And I was like, you know, I think we can go more. And everyone was like, oh, okay. So then people like started going out and telling people, it's like, hey, we've already raised over $100,000, or you like got over 200. And then I was like, hey, so we raised over 200. Like, do you think 300? And then like that just empowered more people. And it was like, I saw firsthand the power of like momentum.
Yeah.
And like again, you can go really fast alone, but if you want to do something and do it big, you got to bring everybody on with you.
Yeah.
And like to bring people on with you, you got to give them like the momentum, the indicators, like all those things. And if you can do that, you can get like people then feel that mission, right? And they'll go a little further for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of like how all those bits like came together, and was able to go through it. And I was like, wow, like I was a little kid and I was just like, huh, fundraising.
That's impressive. That's really impressive because, you know, where I grew up, we would do those little things for leukemia research, St. Jude's. And, you know, I might get like $1,000 maybe for like a bike-a-thon or a walk-a-thon or something. You know, I was like, oh, cool. But 300,000?
Yep.
That's insane, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's really, really good.
Thanks.
And that's cool.
Yeah. It was literally just like, you just knock on the doors, you just do the things.
Yeah.
And it's like, everybody wants to contribute. That was like the thing that like I came to realize, right? And it's like, you know, and it's weird, right? Because like a lot of these things I've been able to revisit more recently through like upon a lot of reflection. And it's like some of those intrinsic things you learn where it's like you might have forgotten it, but you actually don't realize like how much it actually shapes like the actions and the things you do today.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I've seen it firsthand. Yeah. Like I've seen what happens. Like I know what buy-in looks like.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, 100%, man. And that's incredible. And I really like what you said about, you know, once the kind of momentum got going, like people wanted to contribute their time, but they also wanted to contribute their money because there was a mission behind it.
Yeah.
And they believed in it. And it was a noble mission for sure.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's, you know, with these larger corporations these days, and even medium to small size business, people are looking for that mission to be a part of, and that group to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, the mission and the vision are the most important thing. And I think it starts with even starting with yourself. Like, what's your vision of yourself, right? I think
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, it's, and I think a lot of times I've been guilty of this. When life gets busy or tough or rough or whatever it is, it's easier not to think about the vision of what you have for yourself. It's easier to just be like, oh, well, this is what I do every day. This is who I am. So I'm just going to do it every day.
Yep.
And you actually forget like, oh no, like you're doing this right now. You're doing this right now to get to where it is that you like are trying to go. But you can't you can't forget that vision because it's easy to forget.
Yeah.
But if you do,
a lot of shiny distractions out there.
Bingo. But it's like, yeah, it's easy to forget that. And when you forget that, you really like lose yourself.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, with all my clients, we start with that pillar ultimately is exactly like you're saying. Who are you? What are you about? Where's your lane that you're an expert? And now that's where we're going. Because it's easier to get through life that way.
Yep.
And you can accomplish a lot instead of being distracted by a million different things.
Yeah. And distractions are only getting bigger and like they're only getting more and more attractive. So, you know, it's like,
yes, they are.
Yeah. The distractions have never been more distracting. And convenient. So
yeah, convenience is the key word there. Lots of convenience to distraction these days. And it's funny, we got this TV here. This thing's never on.
Yeah.
I never turn it on.
Yeah.
I do my video analysis with my clients, and then we've got this up here. Never turn it on.
Yeah.
And even my laptop, man, it's hardly ever watch anything. You know, I watch some podcasts, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Usually just working, staying on my mission, my focus, like you're saying. So that's awesome. So tell me about this business.
Yeah. So so essentially like what happened was, so I graduated in 2010. Officially. I was able to graduate probably 2009. I just like didn't, it's all like the weird things, like you had to have like these classes that you had to take, and like I kind of pushed them off. So when I was at SC, I was a urban planning major. That's what I got my degree in. And you might be like, well, why urban planning? But you know, I also was taking a lot of like econ courses and comparative literature. And I'm an analytical guy now. And I think, just by nature, if you grew up in an Asian household with a tiger mom, like you'll always probably be pretty good at math.
Yep.
But there is a danger to that because like math is very straightforward. In some senses, like I'm sure that the highest levels, it's got its own beauty, but the stuff that you learn in school early on, makes a fake world, because essentially it's like these numbers are all that matters, right? Or it's like you got to solve this equation. Here are the things you know, and what math doesn't teach you at that stage is like all the areas of gray, and you get that through life, and you get that through well, you got to take a probability class, so you get that through a lot of gambling as well. But that's important because when people are like, oh, I hate calculus, or I hate trig, or I'm bad at math, right? It probably means you're just bad at black and white math. Doesn't actually mean you're bad at math.
Yep.
And comparative literature was like this interesting thing because I just took it because it was like an available class and I needed to get that like whatever requirement. And it took words and was able to be like, now think about the words, think about the author, think about the setting, think about when it was written, think about all the other things that were written at the same time by different authors in different places, and sometimes maybe even the same place, but things are very different. And think about why. Like compare that. Compare the story, compare the characters, compare the way that they write about places. You can literally take, if you really want to learn about something, like history books are great, but you should read the fiction of that period, because the fiction is actually how people are really expressing what they're really feeling.
Yep.
And that was eye-opening to me, because now all of a sudden, like, I was like, this feels like a better analysis than me doing something in statistics and running a pivot table. Like, this feels real, even though arguably it's fake because it's words, right? And it gave me this ability to, it was kind of like a enlightening moment where I saw the spotlight, and all of a sudden I was able to really understand, like, hey, this is what critical thinking is. And it's something that people always say. It's like, I went to USC, so I was like, oh, like a Renaissance scholar, blah, 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 all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, like those are critical studies, blah, blah. Like, yeah, it's all true. But the ability to like take something, understand it, truly understand it for what it's saying it is, and what it says laterally about itself, became clear when I was like taking these comparative literature classes. And I was also taking these economic classes. And I was trying to understand how people build cities. And all of a sudden, it was like the perfect marriage, because I could actually take the things I was learning in theory about economics, the concepts and frameworks that I was using to analyze things in comparative literature, and I could physically see it happen when people make cities. Because a city is essentially just the money and stories of an area at a certain time.
Yeah.
And so that was important because it gave me this worldview of like looking at things. And with that worldview, so this was like 2007, 2008, recession happens. And the government decided to essentially pump a ton of money into infrastructure projects.
Yep.
And so if you talk to the traditional city planner, urban planner, these days it's a little different, but back then it's like, these people are essentially just like really good project managers. There's a list, everything needs to be checked off on the list. And if it does, I'll give you a permit, or I don't give you a permit. And if you get to the more strategic levels, it's like, well, we're making a prediction that that people will still want their mid-century moderns, so we don't want to have too many of them, and here's how we'll try to do things. It's very loose, to its fault and detriment. But nobody knew how to do real math. And the thing was like, this was like the end of George W. Bush, beginning of Obama. Bush's whole thing was like, I'm going to bring a business lens to government. So it's like, I got to see numbers. And so these grants would come out and they'd be like, well, they want to see an ROI. They wanted to understand, like, if you're going to get federal money for something, what's this going to do? How's it going to be distributed? What's the time frame? What's the value? And for the most part, I think the thing that people oftentimes misunderstand about government is that it's actually not, if it's done right, it's not supposed to give a return. Like, government's supposed to like be the bedrock so that things work.
Yep.
And if you think about like you're running a bedrock, like for a business, that's essentially meaning like you are at best break even. But for the most part, like you're not. And so these grant forms would come in and they'd be like, well, how do we express ROI? And I'm there and I was like, well, I know I've done a lot of econ, so I know how to run all the pro formas and do the modeling and forecasting. I've done all the comparative literature, so I actually know how to like take these other things and apply it. And nobody really was like, this is right or wrong. So I kind of could just do what I want. So I went through and like my first couple internships, and I was getting all these like bike infrastructure, bus infrastructure things funded for the city of Gresham and Portland and like all across like different counties and stuff. And it was interesting, right? Because a lot of these like government jobs, people are there. The government workers are exactly who you think they are. It's a person that's been there in the exact same seat for 25 years and is just literally counting their days down to a pension. Yep. And I say that with all love and respect. But there is a type.
Yep.
And so you have this young kid who's an intern who's coming in and is like bringing all these like different words and like showing forecasts and like making maps and GIS and doing all these technical things kind of like by himself and is submitting these things. So, you know, it's like you as the person that might be in charge or managing this intern, you're like, I got nothing to lose. Sure, go ahead, like submit it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so I was submitting these things and like, you know, I would leave and then I would hear back. They'd be like, oh my gosh, hey, so that thing got funded. Like, do you want to come back?
Nice.
So I just found myself again, kind of a different way of fundraising, right? I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like this is how this money works. And so I got really good at that. And I was working for the city of Pasadena out here and was helping them internally write all these grants that they used to essentially hire consultants for. So one of the consultants they used to hire was like, well, why am I not getting any of this grant work anymore? There's like, oh, well, we got a person in-house doing it. And bear in mind, this was like 08, 09. So like the recession was in a shitter. Like all my friends who graduated that year were just like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. Like stay in school. So I was like, okay, I'll like try to stay in school and go through and do my 1+ to get like my master's as well. But then this consultant comes to me and he was like, so why don't you make that money now? Like, forget the master's. Like, I'll pay you what they would pay you if you did have a master's, but come work for me. Like, just come work for me now. I was like, okay, cool. And like, you know, it's a very relationship-based game, like all things.
Yep.
He was just like, yeah, like went over to him and then just started writing grants, all these infrastructure grants. And the way that government kind of works is like you get money from the grant and the city can't use government funding to write grants, right? Like that's just not the way it's allowed. So they have to allocate. But so oftentimes like they won't actually be able to allocate much money for it because it's like, hey, like, you know, if they could do it internally, they would, but it's like the documentation, everything you have to get, it's probably like $20,000, $30,000 worth of time. So oftentimes I get a consultant to do it. But again, these consultants don't know what they're doing either because they were all in the old school sense.
Yep.
So the way it would work is that the consultant will typically come in and take it for a really low rate. Like they'll be like, oh, you know, we'll charge you $5,000 for something that should be 30, but they're going to make it up on the back end. So it's like there is a gentleman's agreement that like if this grant does go through and you get this money, you will hire me for the real work. And so a lot of the short-term people tried to write grants so that embedded in there, it was like, well, there's only one firm that could really do this work. And I think some of the public sector people, the people who are judging these grants saw that and they're like, no, we're not cool with that. And that's why a lot of them didn't get funded. But for me, I was just kind of like, I was oblivious to that. So I was just like, oh, like, well, if you really want this grant to work, like, and that's when I really started putting the pieces together where it's like, so the government doesn't want to just give you money for like projects of a certain size. They want to see other people put in money, or they want to see that the city or county has already set aside a lot of money for this. And like, they just need this to get over the top to prioritize. Governments will funding will go to those types of projects a lot easier than projects where it's like, well, this is something we always want to do and we think it was something we needed to do and we're kind of putting it together last minute. So if you give us this money, we'll do it. But if not, we're not going to do it. Because like the government's like, well, yeah, like I'm not going to just like, I'm not your R&D bucket.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when I really started getting into it. And I was like, oh, so like I have to actually go and network with developers, and I have to network with businesses, and I have to network with other cities. And if I'm a city, I have to network with the county, because the name of the game is like, are you able to get more people to put money into this project? Because if you are, the government will be like, oh, I should put money into that project. And that's essentially what it turned into. So the modern grant writers now, they all know it. Like, that's the playbook.
Yeah.
But at the time, like, it was brand new. So, you know, I was doing this for like cities. And then again, like at a certain point, we were getting too expensive. And I would have these cities come up to me. They were like, well, we want you to work on this, Alan, but like, we can't afford to like go with your firm. So, you know, we're going to go with this other firm. And like a lot of these cities, I was so young at that time. I was like, I really believe in what the city's trying to do. Like, oh, no. Like, I'll try to work it out and like find a way to like, we can write it. And, you know, it's like, I go back to my boss and I'm like, hey, and he's like, nah, like, but he was actually really wise. At the time, I was like, what a greedy jackass. But like in hindsight, I was like, oh no, like the dude knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
He was just like, yeah, like we won't, even if we win that, like we don't have enough people to like work on that project afterwards. So it's like, that's a loss leader for us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was fed up and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to go out and do this on my own. So I did, because like I had all these people tell me like, I'm going to, you know, you should come out and do this. I didn't know how a business ran. I didn't know what a P&L looked like. I didn't know what an invoice was. I didn't know what what payable was.
Like, how old were you at this point?
It's probably like 21, 22.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was like maybe 23, but I did it for a good chunk of time. But yeah, I was just kind of like, I was just like, oh, like, okay, this is how it is. But then like, you know, there are things you don't know, right? Like I was like, oh, like I have low burn, so I didn't really have that much money saved up. And like my parents didn't really have like that much money to like give me. So it was just kind of like, oh, okay, like I had like $10,000. I was like, you know, I got $10,000, like that'll be fine. But then it's like, I didn't realize you have legal costs, you have like tax costs. And I didn't realize that cities will take up all 90 days to pay you.
Yep.
So I would do this work and I'd be like, where's my money? And there'd be no money. And then it'd be 60 days and still no money. And then 90 days. And sometimes they'd forget, right? Or it's like, oh, the check wasn't cut. And we only cut checks on these days.
Yeah.
So I learned all the little things. And then I was like, okay, so the way I need it to work for my business is that I need to be forecasting 90 days out. And so I need to have enough money come in to hit this baseline in order to just pay myself. And I was like, and the name of the game is like, I gotta like pay myself less than the amount that's in there. And I was, you know, doing this, I was like essentially a service business. And I was winning projects everywhere, but it was like, I was winning so much work because I was also like coding all these different macros and things like that, where I was like, oh, this kind of a project, great, I have a template. Just like push the things in, I would go through, ask some questions. I'd be like, okay, cool, this is what this project is probably gonna cost. How much money have you set aside? Okay, cool, what area are you in? Okay, what are we trying to build? Okay, let me go through my Rolodex, try to talk to some businesses to see if they have interest in there. Ask them if they have businesses they're currently speaking with that I can go talk to see like, hey, you know, if you throw in a campus here to redo the sidewalks, right? Like, what do you want? Oh, you don't want to have the parking requirements. Okay, I'll go back and talk to the city. They're willing to go in and dump this much and this much infrastructure if you get rid of this parking requirement. They're like, okay, cool, we can do that. And so that's when I was just like, oh, that's how this really works. You're just essentially facilitating and showing desire in an area.
Facilitating, negotiating. So when do you do a holding account and then pay yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. That's what my accountant, and again, like I didn't have an accountant at first. I was just like, oh, like I can do this. Like I know how to balance a checkbook. Like I write fucking like forecasting macros, right? Like I'm giving stuff to like, you know, JP Morgan to figure out what they want to fund and CBRE. Like, how can I not do this? And I was like, oh no, accounting math is very different. Like math.
It is.
Yeah. So yeah, early on I was just kind of like, oh, okay, like that's how this works. And so yeah, then it got to a point where I was getting enough work and I was automating and like QuickBooks. So like the invoices were getting automated. I knew I kind of made it when I wasn't checking every day to see if like checks cleared. Right. And I was just like, oh, there's enough in here. Whereas like, and then I wasn't really paying myself that much because like I didn't really need to. But it was just like, you do still get the like the mental dopamine hit though of like, oh, like I'm getting paid.
It is a very real hit.
Yeah.
I think anybody in business is addicted to that. When you're making that sale,
Yeah.
when the check's coming in, all that stuff. I mean, it's the same for me. Like, you put all this work in, not really 100% knowing that you're going to get paid for it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't. But when you do and everything just falls like dominoes perfectly,
Yeah.
it's one of the greatest feelings I've ever experienced.
Oh yeah. No, it's huge.
Yeah.
And you become self-reliant.
Yeah. Totally.
Which I think is like a muscle that definitely needs to be built. Like no one's born with it. And if someone is, I feel bad for them.
A lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of time, a lot of trial, a lot of things just going really, really wrong to build that confidence to weather the future storms.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you said a lot of interesting stuff in that. When a city or a town is looking to develop itself out, you know, you were talking about math, you were talking about comparative literature, and seeing that all come to fruition in the form of an urban setting. What are you seeing? Like, what's going on there? Can you kind of like explain the dance that you see going on and how it's being choreographed, so to speak?
Yeah. So it depends on the city, and it depends on the area, and it depends on like the leadership of the area. So, and that's critical. So you can take a smaller city, like say, trying to think of a small city that'd be a good example. And California is hard because like all the cities are kind of big. But let's take a college town. Like everybody knows a college town. So if you take a college town, the city council for that college town, the city managers, the employees, they all know that they work for the college, right?
Ultimately.
And so like for them, they always know who the elephant is, or the gorilla, whatever animal you want to use. And so that limits their purview, right? And so you'll find oftentimes in small cities, they're just reactive. They're just sort of like, this would be nice. Oh, it's really important that the crosswalks work correctly. This is a pass-through town. People just pass through it. Because a city needs to really understand what they're offering. So some cities, like say Hawthorne, for example, just south of here, its history was rooted in a lot of aerospace.
Yep.
And so and they had a lot of starter homes. And that's why you have a lot of homes, a lot of first generation families with the homes there, because they worked somehow in the aerospace, whether if it was for a contractor, whether if it was directly for them, if it was for a third party that provided a service for them, right? And so like Hawthorne, for example, is in kind of a rut because its entire identity was like, we are an aerospace town. Now what happened once all the aerospace moved out? There was nothing that could fill that void, right? Nothing could fill it to the scale it needed it to be. And so that's when it was like, okay, well, shoot, now I have a jobs problem. Then if I have a jobs problem, that usually means I'm going to then get a crime problem.
Yep.
If I get a crime problem, that then means I'm going to have a deterioration in my school's problem, right? And there's like other things that play about like how tax bases are figured out and stuff. But
so I want to interrupt you really quick. For example, like I grew up on the East Coast, close to West Virginia, right? And if a mine would shut down, you know, you had these ghost towns, right? So that is a very small example of what you're saying is happening on a larger scale.
Yep.
When an industry or a town has these issues.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing is like, and this is like, if you choose to, if you care to, and if you do want to take an interest in the business of your city, is that you need to go in there and have a say, because it's really powerful to go through. It's like, do you want to be a mining town? You know, it's like there was that great Netflix documentary about that town in Ohio. And, you know, and like the Chinese conglomerate came in and they're like, hey, we want to like start manufacturing the way that they do in China. And like just nothing worked, right? And it's interesting. It's like, well, that always was a manufacturing town, but it didn't really work because of a variety of reasons. And because it didn't work for a variety of reasons, what is it that we are doing to actually like understand why it's not working? Is it not working because like we just don't want to work that way? Or is it not working because people don't want to manufacture that way? Has that town's manufacturing evolved? Has that city, has its citizens, or the interest? Like, all these things really matter. And the cities that are, and there's small cities and big cities, it's not that the big cities do it any better. They just have access to more capital.
Yep.
But the best cities to live in are the cities that have a clear idea on what they want that to be. When you see cities that have great parks, when you see them have great infrastructure, when things kind of just seem like they work well. Like I always say, like, I think one of the most underrated cities in America is Ann Arbor. If you go to Ann Arbor, like, yeah, it's not really like a party town. It's a college town, but not really a college town, because there's a lot of Ford presence and there's a lot of investment and there's a lot of, like, you know, small niche industry. But it's kind of like what it's trying to do, right? Like, it's trying to kind of be like a Bay Area of that region. So, like, they have to have enough to cultivate and spend the money so that you have those kinds of businesses come in, spend the money so that you have the amenities so that the graduates want to stay there.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And they have a clear idea of that. You can tell pretty quick, like down here in SoCal, I think it was, starts with a V, but there was a city that was a couple years ago that was essentially like everyone was embezzling money, right? And it was essentially like they were a huge manufacturing center. I think population is only city of Vernon. It was like there was like 100 residents, but tons of workers, because it was this essentially a manufacturing plant. If you have American Apparel t-shirts, it was made around there.
Okay.
And everybody on city council, like, just to be on city council part-time, they were getting like $75,000 a year, or like $300,000 a year. And like, you have the city controller of that area and city manager making like $500,000. It's like, do you really need to be making $500,000 to govern 100 people where the town shuts down at 3 o'clock every day on the weekdays, and on the weekends it's a ghost town because the 100 people in there are not spending any of their money in there? They're going to downtown LA, Downey, Orange County to actually spend their money. Like, when you start, like, the cities that don't have a vision for themselves, that's where all the corruption happens, because it's easy. You can run things by because nobody has expectations for it. And so it's like, you know, if you ever kind of look at it and you're like, well, what happens? Like, how does the corruption happen at a public level? It's my experience with it is it always happens when there's no expectations.
Yeah.
So it's really important to actually hold those entities and to a certain standard so that expectations are there and are set.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, you know, the town or the city not having a vision for itself. You know, I travel a lot in Eastern Europe, and I see that everywhere in Eastern Europe. It's just corruption everywhere. And I see the potential.
Mm-hmm.
I see all of the value that's there in these places, but the people in charge, like, don't have that unified vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the places are just dumps,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because nobody can get clear on, I think the citizenry for the most part is clear on what they want,
Yeah.
but they're not in the positions to be able to make the changes that they want. And everybody there is just so corrupt, and their vision is the corruption, right?
Yeah.
Is to be getting paid, just like in Vernon, getting paid to manage 100 people and not have a clear vision.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's like, that's kind of the dance. So like, when someone comes in and is like, hey, I want to apply for money to do something, it's like the dance I'm sort of seeing is like, well, what's the city trying to do? Right? Because like, sometimes you're asking for money because like, you might have a new mayor, you might have a city council that's come in there in between a 30-year plan. And they're like, we don't want that vision anymore. Like, we actually want to get more high rises, or we want to get more employers in here. And like, we can't get employers in here if our roads are too congested. So I need funding to go through and break these roads apart, so it's more attractive for business. And I got like 5 years to do this. And that's why I need this money right now. Right.
Now that you said that, it reminds me of something. I don't know that most people know that this is coming in South Beach, Miami, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
All those bars and clubs and all that stuff along South Beach.
Yeah.
They have a new vision there.
Mm-hmm.
And those people aren't going to like it, but it's coming.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why it's like, again, if you care about these things, you should stay engaged.
Yeah.
Because you can't always make a difference, but you can definitely make it harder for the vision you don't want to have happen.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It was just really interesting that you said that, because it reminded me, because I was talking with some folks down there that are in the know, and there's like, yeah, we're done with this vision.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be all high end.
Yeah.
So I think it's smart for that area.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like times change,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's like, again, times change and things change faster these days.
Yep.
So that's why it's also important to have like strong leadership, and like why these individuals, when they get elected, like you might not pay that much attention to it, but it's like, oh no, like it's actually quite important. Because like, yeah, and it's also the stuff that really impacts you.
Yeah. Especially, like those business owners down there. So it's definitely going to impact them.
Yeah.
That's for sure. This is fascinating, man. Like I've never been able to sit down with anyone that's been able to explain what you're talking about in fairly simple terms that I'm like catching on to. I'm like, oh, okay, I see why things are the way they are. Let's move on to what you funded. You said you funded some major infrastructure projects. What are we talking about here?
Yeah. So, got through, if you're in the SoCal area, got money through for Expo Line. So that was like one of the big ones. So the train to get the money through for there for phase 2.
That's from what, downtown to
Culver City to the beach.
Culver City to
Yeah.
the beach. Yeah.
Did a lot of work. So there's some projects in the Orange Line, essentially, which was like a big one, still kind of going through and being built. I did not keep my hands on any of the high-speed rail stuff, because I knew that was going to be I knew that was never going to work. So I stayed far away from it. Did some work with the regional connector. So it's sort of the new spot in downtown LA where all the trains kind of go in.
Okay.
To go through for that. So those are the local ones. And then, yeah, like statewide. Yeah, it's like so many of these projects. Because again, it's like as a project goes through, it's like you have to fund all these aspects of it, not just the infrastructure. So you have to oftentimes you have to fund the studies. And here in California, there's a lot of studies. But it's like it kind of goes through for everything. So the feasibility. So
when you're doing a project, is it the infrastructure, the utilities, the people that are going to run it? Like, is that all taken into an account, or is it just a specific thing that you focus on?
So I will typically I don't do this anymore. I used to only work on infrastructure projects, just because there was something tangible about it, and you could tap into a lot of the needs and goals and visions of developers, because you had to essentially be like the whole like build and they'll come. That's true, but you want to make sure that while you're building it, they're coming.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of like the most important part. And the way that a lot of the stuff works is like, so operations is typically not included in the cost of the construction. So oftentimes this was like just about like, how do we construct this and get this up and going? And then operations is a little weird depending on each municipality. So for example, here in like LA, as they're trying to build a larger transit rider base, and they were on a pretty good path before the pandemic, it was like, there was an expectation that these things will be running at a certain loss, right? And the goal is that you try to do a lot of ridership forecasts to essentially predict when things could break even. And that's the goal that you kind of sell. That's the vision you're selling. Most of the projects never do. Never. But again, it's like, that's not really the job of it, right? It's going to be curious to see how some of these things turn out with the high-speed rail. Like I know the one in Miami, I know the LA to Vegas. I'm curious to see how those things will turn out. But for the most part, it's so hard, because a lot of like, you can only model so much and you can only charge so much, especially when the goal is not to make a profit. The goal is to make sure everybody has access to mobility. So you innately know a lot of people will not pay their share.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. And so when we see these kind of projects and we use them, the ultimate goal in a perfect world would be for that to pay for itself. But the reality of it is, it's never really going to be in the black.
I think it depends on how you want to do the accounting, because the ultimate goal for doing these projects is to grow the city.
Yeah.
So if a project is never in the black, but that's the reason why a large employer came in, which is offsetting other things. It's like, it's not so much that the project needs to be in the black. The city books need to be in the black, not necessarily the projects. The projects are just sort of like little building blocks so that you can get there.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
If we do this, the potential of this employer coming in, now spending more money across the board on city services covers the loss on
Exactly.
this metro line.
Yeah.
So,
but like that's the problem, because again, like I can spend hours on this, but it's like, well, who's funding what?
yeah,
So this is a county thing, and this county enables this thing. So what is this city's contribution into this thing? That's when it starts getting really heated.
yeah,
Um,
I can see that.
yeah. So again, it's like, and that's like the kind of beauty and messiness of this all. Like, you don't know what can happen, but somebody needs a vision.
Yeah.
And
It's like business as usual.
yeah, exactly. It's like business as usual on the private side for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Every day. That's like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe this will work.
Yeah.
I think it'll work, but sometimes it just doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how hard you work at it. Now you talked about campuses.
Mhm.
Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Oh gosh, where to start? So yeah, there's this entire,
Because you've done some work
Mhm.
around campuses.
yeah, so it depends on, like, there's obviously college campuses and there's corporate campuses. And it's quote unquote campus planning. But the idea is like, well, what's the goal of the campus? The goal of the campus is essentially to facilitate, right, an idea or a vision, right? So if it's at a college, it's like, well, we want to make it easy for the students to intermingle with one another for a variety of things, depending on the type of college you're at, so that things can happen, right? At a corporate campus, it's like, well, we want to make sure all of our employees are able to kind of interact with one another so that the product team knows what the operations team, what the R&D team, all that stuff is doing. And it's getting interesting a lot harder as things are getting more remote. And I think you see the difference, especially when you're in Europe versus, or the old world versus like what you see here, where a lot of those things, it's like just kind of through campus planning back in the day was a byproduct of the geography. Well, if you live in a hilly area, this is what it is. I mean, it's kind of like if you look at UCLA versus USC, UCLA, really woody, like really hilly. And then like where the students live, the spots where they go to, it's very different. And that's why you have certain business corridors where they're at. So when building a campus, essentially the goal is to be able to go in there and like really have the owner, whoever's paying for it, like, what are we trying to do here? So, I had the chance to do some work with Zappos. It's like, well,
The shoe company.
the shoe company.
Nice.
So they were just like, well, like we see all the benefits like Google has and all the stuff that they do in the Bay Area. We don't really have the money for that. We're out here in Henderson, Nevada, but it's not a controversial thing to say. Like, if it's easier for people to move around and mingle with each other, it's probably better. It's better for culture. It's better for ideas. It's better for overall outlook. And we think we can do that. And the problem is like Vegas wasn't really built for that. Vegas was really built for casinos, hotels, etc.
Yep.
And so, they went through and did a Herculean effort to essentially take over City Hall and turn it into their new campus. And that's why if you go to like downtown Vegas, it is very different from the Strip. Because you have the container park, you have all these things. You're like, oh, this is like nice to live around. This is nice to be at.
Yep.
And it's nice to be at because they essentially are like, this is our campus. Very similarly, if you go to Mountain View, if you're in a Mountain View and you're not doing anything with Google, I really don't know why you're in Mountain View.
Yeah. Right.
But everything in Mountain View is sort of built around Google, right? As these big mega companies come more and more, you're going to start seeing that. I got to do some work on the ESPN campus out in Bristol. And it's like, it's very similar out there. It's like, well, hey, we're like this was like when it was like peak, when it was like the responsible business unit for a lot of Disney's profits because cable was still a thing. It was like, oh, well, like we need more studios. We need more this. We need more that. We got to build it out. It's got to get bigger and bigger. And it's like, well, yeah, like the vision of the campus was so that it could support this global sports media entity that was convenient enough to kind of get to from New York and provided all the stuff that you needed that was too expensive to have there. But you could essentially if you want to do things digitally, if you wanted to do things analog, if you want to do broadcasts, it was always humming. Very similar to a lot of like, Detroit and a lot of like those old auto towns that you see.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, in essence, what the campus planning is. It's sort of like, what's the vision? Okay, got it. What's the housing need to look like? What's the mix need to look like? How do people move around? And then from there, it's like, okay, cool. Like, if you're a Fortune 10, 5, 15, it's like, well, yeah, it's like I can foot the bill for that. But for the most part, like if you, a great example is Amazon and South Lake Union, in the Seattle area. South Lake Union used to be desolate. Nothing really there. Lots of empty warehouses. And now it's this like entire thriving Amazon community that's like right inside Seattle. And a lot of that stuff happened not because like Amazon kickstarted a lot of it, but the Tom Douglas restaurants, the bars, all those things that are in there, like the city got a commission. They got a cut from that.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
they like those things coming in there.
Sure.
And so they helped fund a lot of it. And then you had, I forget his name, RIP, Paul Allen, Vulcan, I believe was his development arm. Like he was building all the sky rises like around there to help support, because like if you have this new vibrant campus area, it's going to have spillover.
Yeah.
So like the stuff goes around. So again, it's like, and I think Seattle's like a good example. Like they have like, it's like, what are you trying to be? And like, what are you doing to get there?
You think they're on point with that?
It's hard to say. I don't like live there, so it's hard for me to do that assessment. But I mean, I think they have the problems that every metro has.
Sure.
I think some of those problems might be bigger than like what they can handle.
Yeah.
But other metros have handled it better than others. So, yeah, I'm not sure, but I do know that they probably are not happy that Amazon makes up is such a big gorilla in the room, because historically, the King County, Seattle area, it's like you had Boeing, Starbucks,
Yep.
Kirkland, Costco,
Yep.
Microsoft, Nordstrom's. It's always been quite diversified. It's a secret little enclave of wealth that a lot of people like overlook. And then you have Amazon coming in there now, who, does business a very different way.
Yeah.
And has taken a lot of the public facing persona of Seattle. So that's what I'm guessing, but it's also hard to try to understand, because the nice thing when you do have a behemoth like that come in, it's pretty predictable. Like when you have one of the most valuable companies in the world in there, it's valuable because it's operating really well.
Yeah.
Like when GE was like back in the day when it was the powerhouse. It's a powerhouse because everybody knew they came in there. They knew what exactly they provided as a cog in that system.
Yep.
And it's very predictable.
Yeah. Which is more encouraging for people to spend money in economies to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool, man.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. This is a fascinating conversation for me.
Oh yeah. No, I'm glad.
I absolutely am enthralled with this stuff. Is really, really cool. So let's move on to how you got involved with some of the more prominent companies that a lot of people that will probably be listening to this podcast have heard of and have interacted with. So we have Beats,
Mhm.
PLAYBOY.
Mhm.
What else we have?
Nike,
Mm-hmm.
Quaker.
Quaker.
Yeah. I mean, so I had the luxury of being able to, after all the city stuff, I kind of got jaded by a lot of it, because the more entrenched I got and the more I realized that like stuff works because of the facilitation of relationships. And a lot of the consultants who worked in the space, who were just kind of glorified lobbyists, but like at a local level. So like, people didn't pay attention to them, but they were, I don't want to use the word corrupt, because like that's not really fair. But like, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I intrinsically, as a kid that grew up in Portland, Oregon, had a very different view on like how taxpayer dollars should be used. And I get like that's how the world worked, but I just was like not that into it anymore. And this was also like having worked at Disney and, you know, Zappos and all those things. And so from there, was kind of burnt out and had the opportunity to go and work at this like small agency. And they were just like, yeah, we have no like data analytics capabilities. And I was like, data analytics is like, I can do that in my sleep. Old hacks. And so I joined it, and it was this very interesting because it was like the first time it was like, you know, you at a creative agency, so an ad agency. What's really interesting is that for the most part, you have to have this weird mix. And you need a lot of the ones that do really well or used to do really well was a heavy mix of creative. So you had a ton of creative directors, art directors, copywriters, people that were just coming up with ideas most of the time. Because the reality is that those people, like, as you get more and more farther along in your career, you are less precious about your babies. And so, you know, if you come up with 1,000 ideas, at least one of those would be good.
Yep.
And if you come up with 10,000, you know, you should have at least like, you know, 10 good ideas. And if you have 10 good ideas, you can then really start going through and be like, well, what's the one that's going to win? And what happens is that like when timelines get compressed, which is what a lot of these tech companies do, that's why the creativity that you see these days is really just, in my opinion, gone down the hill.
I was having a conversation about that the other day. Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. Because a lot of this stuff just takes time and it takes space. And so this was my first interaction of like, whoa, like I was in a culture of collared shirt every day. City workers tend to start at 7 a.m. So I try to be, if I had to go in and get a favor, if I had to talk to somebody, if I had to get like a certain report, if I had to do something, I was the guy bringing in donuts, right? To be like, hey, like, you know, what's the status on this? Hey, is my check cleared? Like, what's going on here, right? That was me. And when I started to get burnt out from that, I was like, oh, like over here at creative agency, I can wear a t-shirt and jeans and just come in, and all the art directors are tattooed and they come in at like 10 a.m. and they stay till like 8 p.m. and, you know, everyone's just like drinking, partying all the time. And so, you know, an ad agency will typically be, you know, a healthy one, probably like 40% of the workforce is creative. And then probably like the other 30% is probably like account managers, things like that, grow the business, make sure that like you're servicing the client correctly. And then the last 30% is a mix of like overhead and, you know, strategy work. Because at the end of the day, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if nobody feels anything, it's all for naught.
Yep.
And so that's where things get really interesting and sort of like where the world's currently at, especially with consumer brands, because you have to really have the right synchronization of how the output of things are and the time it takes to create the things and the message or idea or thing that you're really trying to portray. So yeah, like, so through that, it was sort of like a weird blessing, because I went from a world where I dealt with no creative, and now it's like, hey, you gotta like kind of appease these creatives, because at the end of the day, like their sweat is worth more than mine. And, you know, it's like, you just gotta admit it, accept it, and like go with it.
Yep.
The sooner you do, the sooner you can actually embrace like what's actually happening there. And so, yeah, like while being there, it's like, you know, it was really humbling, because for the first time, I was so used to dealing with predictability, with numbers, pro formas, things like that. A lot of known knowns, and the creativity was about just taking the known knowns and maybe shifting the order a bit. But this was all of a sudden all emotional. Hey, like this is a great idea, but like if the person hearing it that day, you know, if it's an idea that hits upon nostalgia, if this person just had someone important in their life pass away, might not hit the bell at the time.
Yep.
And it's unpredictable. But at the end of the day, though, if you do it right, it's all about the story and how you're able to sell the story. And so it was humbling, because when you work in that field, you have to take the assumptions and judgments you have and throw them out the window. Because a lot of times, and this is where I think the whole thing about AI and predictive analytics and all that stuff is like, it misses the beauty of this here. It's like, you're never going to know what works in creative until it does.
Yep.
And that's like the last little vestige, I think, of humanity that we have and we should try to preserve. But yeah, so it was go through like everything from like pitching these businesses to actually executing on the work. And it's like, well, hey, here's this idea. Okay, cool. And then, again, also understanding like, are we doing a product launch, or are we doing a campaign? Are we keeping something that's existing and doing well, just keeping it going? Or are we launching something new? Are we trying to change expectations? How are we thinking about how we're talking to people? And then all of a sudden, by doing that, I started seeing firsthand. And again, I come from a mindset of like very analytical. Oh, like I could machine learn that. Oh, I could do like, and it was really dumb in hindsight, having that mentality, because I was uncomfortable with the fact that a lot of the success of this stuff was out of everyone's control. And so whenever I was facing those things, and when I wasn't mature enough to deal with it, I was just like, oh, this is not going to work. And it's like everyone can try to say they're unbiased, like everyone's biased. So and if you're too biased, you actually are unable to understand how things work. And so
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Really good point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's like I can't stress enough that it's like a lot of times things will work and they probably never should have, but they worked.
Yep.
And then you just gotta be like, oh, all right. And that kind of goes back to like probabilities and odds and understanding like, the gray spots of what numbers can't say or do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the reason why, the Oakland A's haven't won a championship yet, right? Like Moneyball is just Moneyball. Looks good on paper, yet to deliver the results. But yeah, just echoing back to it, right? It's like you have to be humble enough to set aside a lot of your biases if you care about trying to understand how something worked. Because for the most part, I can tell you this, everything can work. Now the most important thing is can it work in a certain time frame? And can it work to achieve a certain goal? And those are the two most important filters. Because if you are, and a lot of times people don't even realize it, but they're presuming time frame and outcome together when they're looking at something. And that's the most like uncomfortable thing. So it's like, again, what you want to do is you want to think about how the pieces fit together. And if you can do that and understand, it's like, oh, well, like when this piece has more time, does it increase the odds? Because I saw it work over there. When that piece was working right and it had more time, it actually worked. Or, oh, when this thing over here, like there's no reason why that shouldn't have worked, but it didn't work. And here are all the things that like, quote unquote, might have went wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And oftentimes it's like, yeah, it's like there's a misalignment on time frame and outcome, or, size of outcome. So it's important to always kind of like think about that, especially when you're trying to do something that is quote unquote creative, or when you're trying to come up with a solution that like isn't a recipe that's like in a book somewhere.
Yeah, very, very true. I mean, that's just the nature of business sometimes. And as much as we want to always be able to have that predictability, it's just not there, unfortunately. And somebody like yourself, coming from working in urban planning, which I'm sure is ones and zeros, to, oh yeah, this might work, I think it's going to work.
Yeah,
that had to be a huge shift.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? The more you know me, the more you'll see me like talk and use metaphors and analogies, because a lot of that comp lit training, has made me a really lateral thinker. But if you had to kind of like look at things in life, there's baking and there's cooking, right? So there's a lot of times in life when you just have to bake and you got to do your taxes. That's just baking, right? If you're cooking your taxes, like that's pray for you.
Yeah.
But when you're doing business, a lot of times it's not baking, it's cooking.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, oh, like, burner's not working right. Oh, put too much salt into this.
Yeah.
Oh, like, it's okay if the ingredients change, but you got to like know what the ingredients are trying to do. And you got to know that you have the technique to like get through it.
Yep.
And again, there's like different ways to do the technique. Like you can make a cacio e pepe 4 different ways. You can make it really fast if you want to use a blender. You can make it really slow if you just want to use your hand. And if you don't have a blender, well, probably shouldn't try to be doing it that way. Yep. And you know, if you can't keep the fire going long enough, you might not want to do it the other way. And even then it's like, you know, you just got to be really real with yourself. Like, well, what am I really trying to do here? Like, is the goal to make the best cacio e pepe, or is the goal to make sure that like I'm having a great meal with my friends, my partner, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Because that also then let you see like, oh, this is actually what I'm really trying to do. So maybe I shouldn't be sweating it so much to try to do this over here. Because like, sure, I might make the best cacio e pepe in the world, but like it might actually make the dinner conversation a little uncomfortable because like, you know, I'm sweating too much, or, you know, she's too busy eating.
Yeah, I get it. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've experienced that myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you do for Beats and what did you do for Playboy? And I do want to talk about Woobies.
Oh yeah. So Beats was just like standard campaign stuff. So it's just like you go through, hey, we have this idea. Hey, let's talk about like what getting in the zone looks like. Okay, how do we do that? Because a lot of times these things are really emotional, right?
Totally.
And so words won't do it. Visuals will, right? And again, everyone gets in the zone differently. And like that was kind of the insight, right? So it's like, well, how do we do that? Okay, well, we need Conor McGregor to do something. Oh, we need Richard Sherman to do something. Oh, we need Serena Williams to do something. And they all get into the zone differently. But the commonality when you get in the zone is it's kind of tunnel vision. So how are we able to go through and use imagery and video to communicate that? Because Beats were never good headphones. You didn't buy them for the audio quality. You bought them for what it represented. It was more fashion, right? And again, it's like timing, right?
Apple?
Well, Apple, I think, yeah, Apple does some interesting things, but with Beats more so, it was like, I guess the difference between Apple and Beats, right, is that Apple does its things that it's supposed to do really well, really well. Beats does nothing audially really well. Doesn't really do anything really well. The only thing it does really cool is it's got cool colors and it's got cool celebrities.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Right?
Yep.
And so again, it's just about like, well, I take these cool celebrities and I show them, I show the audience what this means. Right? Because like, again, it's like, if you remember, it's like the high end ones, it was like getting in the zone, down the tunnel, going in. And then you had the other ones when it was like, you know, I'm doing selfies and it was like, oh, we're going to have one of the Jenner sisters. It's like, oh, a solo selfie. It's about style. It's about showcasing that. And that product was at $200 was aspirational for kids in high school. And the working adults and the true athletes and the diehards, you know, there was a $400 pair of headphones.
Yep.
So again, it was just really about like the campaigns to go through to help extend some of these was like really where it was at. And then again, it was Beats was all about identity. It was a vehicle to express your identity.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've seen that style of messaging happening more and more in the past 15 years or so than I had seen it when I was younger. I think it's become a little bit more prevalent.
Well, I can go really deep into that. A lot of it is like how you're able to get stuff. So when you and I were growing up, there was 10 channels, right? And so at 10 channels, it's just sort of like, well, you got 30 seconds. So in 30 seconds, you know, you spend all the money usually on one commercial spot, maybe 2. But now it's like when you look at those Beats commercials, there's like 10 of them. And like, why are there 10 of them? Oh, well, because like you're going to get a YouTube one, you're going to get a TV one, you're going to get a social one, there's more distractions that inundate you.
Yep.
That go through and make it more in your face. So because of that, because of how the way that we engage with things, because those formats and channels have changed, the media that goes with it has to. So there's actually room now to go through and be like, this is about identity. But if the only time that you're going to go through and do a Monday Night Football spot, you're not trying to you're not trying to tell an identity story.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're able to break that down because I've seen that, but I didn't know the workings behind it. But that makes total sense. Total sense. So you helped take Playboy public, and what role were you when you were doing that?
Yeah, so I came to Playboy because I loved working on like a lot of these, let's just call them like legacy brands that were trying to get digital. And so the pitch to me when I first came on was like, that's what we're trying to do. So, okay, cool. Like, I know how marketing works. I know how marketing operations work. I know what demand generation looks like. I didn't really know pricing. Merchandising, I didn't really have a strong idea about. It was like someone else always merchandised it. But like I came there and it was like, okay, cool. Like at first they were trying to go at it alone. And I was like, oh, you guys are so far away. There's so many problems. Your operations aren't built to handle the order supply that you need to hit to make these numbers a reality. So it's like, even if you wanted to make these numbers real, your constraints from a supply chain side is too large to be able to do that. Right. So it's like being able to show them these realities. So you have two options. You can go through and try to build that capability or capacity, or you buy it, right? Buy, build, or partner. And so it was cool because at that point, then you got to see a lot of the firsthand workings of like what acquisition looked like. And it was like, okay, well, we can't do it. So we're going to go and acquire. Now, then you go through and they acquired some companies that I got to be a part of and help do the diligence and bring them in. But then it's like, okay, so you're buying these companies and like, why are we buying them? It's like, are we buying these things because we're trying to have it offset some inefficiencies we have? Or are we trying to buy it because we'd rather just grab that horse and let our horse go? And that takes vision and commitment to do. And so a lot of companies, when they go through this process, they might not have that vision. And because they don't have that vision, they don't have that commitment. So you'll see this all the time when a lot of mergers and acquisitions happen. You just buy a ton of companies. Because if you buy a ton of companies, it's like, oh, well, I'm diversifying. I'm hedging my bets, right?
Yeah.
And that can work, right? But as expectations get ramped up, it doesn't work as well. So my job is essentially going through and helping on the digital side come in and integrate all these pieces together and then be responsible for the revenue that they were bringing in. And that required me to work pretty closely with the head of technology to be like, okay, well, hey, we're going to bring in this ordering system. Okay, why are we bringing that ordering system? Oh, because it, serves these functions. And so you got to really actually go in and really understand the business that you do buy or the businesses that you're running, what you're trying to do and how you're trying to get them there and how those pieces work and play with one another. Because the revenue is a byproduct of that orchestra. And there are things that you can always do to sort of hack and short term some of those things to get the revenue in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like when you go to the concert and it's like, well, I only came here to see, Flea do a solo and like, I'm going to leave after that. So, you don't want to do that, right? Because that means people, as long as Flea's able to do the solo, like you'll stick around. But like the moment he's unable to, like people are gone.
Yeah.
You want people to be coming there to see the entire band. Like you want the peppers, right?
Yep.
So like, that's why it's important to like have that symphony. Like the revenue, the money is a byproduct of that symphony working. And that's the thing that a lot of business people don't understand. It's like, you gotta have the music going. And again, you can try to shortcut things and that's fine. There's ways to do it, but you got to always remember the name of the game is not just shortcut after shortcut after shortcut, which is the reason why you see companies like Allbirds and whatnot, like just, go to oblivion.
Yeah. You see that a lot these days.
Yeah.
A lot of companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yep.
Yeah. Building the music is hard.
I really like that. That is that's a really awesome analogy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's something I try to do with my coaching company is to have ways to make more music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to keep people involved so that I can help them get to where they want to go ultimately. So yeah, that's really interesting the way you put that. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so by you doing your part, they were able to go public with everything they needed to ultimately, be there at the closing bell and do their thing, right?
Yep.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I do want to talk about Woobies. You guys know this show's sponsored by Woobies. We love our Woobies. Alan's got his Woobies on. Amazing.
Yep.
So how did you get involved with those guys? That's where we met.
Mhm.
And what's your vision? What's your role? What are you going to be doing with Woobies?
Yeah. So I met Woobies essentially kind of like during the pandemic. And the thing was like, hey, there's these veterans. They got a good product, but they are having a hard time figuring out like what to do and what to do next. And it's kind of like a byproduct at the times, right? It's like, I talk a lot about like alpha and beta. So, it's like alpha is like when you try to find an edge on a single thing. Beta is like when you get the edge on a broader thing. And so for them, the beta was, at the time, it's like everyone was at home stuck in the pandemic buying things. So things were just kind of going through, and it's like, they're like, well, like how do we get this and scale it up? So, got the chance to meet the CEO, Mason, and I was like, really good guy. And I was like, really smart, really good guy. But yeah, just kind of like, there's just a lot of things he hasn't seen yet.
Yeah.
And so
Mason's awesome.
yeah, no, Mason's like an awesome guy. And, it's like when I learned more about them and I was like, oh, like, obviously they all want to make money and do all that, like everybody does. But they're like, oh no, like it's for them. The big thing is about giving back to the veteran community.
Yep.
And it was like, like these guys were just like, yeah, like we came back, tried to hold on to jobs, couldn't hold on to jobs. Like, it's just like things were different, dealing with a lot of trauma, dealing with a lot of like the coming back to life, changing your expectations. And it was so eye-opening, enlightening to sort of like, it's like someone can say those things and you're like, oh, I get it in theory, but like to see it was impactful. And so, yeah, like that was kind of the big thing for me. It was like just seeing as like, these guys are trying really hard to get there, and they are, like all things, right? Like sometimes you just got to manufacture some music to like get things going, to bring people to the party. Right. But again, you got to remember, it's like once the free booze goes out, right? Like you're just kind of like, oh, and the music's bad.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, oh, people start leaving. And so the whole thing with Woobies was like, okay, you guys are going through and you're doing this. Here's the advice. Like, here are the pieces you need to start doing together so you can actually have the music play the right way. And also, again, it goes back to vision. It's like, hey, like, well, what is it that you want this company to do? Like, how do you want this company to be? Like, do you want to just be a shoe company? Do you want to be a lifestyle brand? Like, what is it that you're trying to do? And the longer you wait not answering that question is the thing that ultimately like becomes the biggest distraction. So again, it was like also just like kind of like working with them and making sure it's like, hey, like this is the timing, right? Like you can try to shortcut these things. You can try to think that you're in control of so much, but like a lot of this is out of your control. And a lot of it's out of your control until like you are able to like get clear on like what you want your vision to be, how you take that vision, how do you run with it, what do you do next from it.
Yep.
And so yeah, coming in, it was sort of like, all right, cool, like here's what you guys got to fix first, right? Like your ordering system is a mess, you got to go through and fix that. Okay, if your ordering system's right, you can now feel confident to go through and get the demand right for the sales generation. So how's your sales generation look like? Oh, you're having a lot of word of mouth, have some paid ads, have some of this, you have some of that. It's like, okay, well, like one of these is more volatile than the others. So what's volatile? How's it volatile? What do we do next? And then bringing that through to the next bit. So it's very much like being able to balance that and help the team over at Woobies there, internalize that, get the band in the right spot, get the music going, and seeing, can we sell out a 5-person theater, 10-person, 15, 20, 50, 30, 100, 1,000, 10,000. And the only way to do is like, you got to keep on getting reps, and you got to be comfortable with the fact that like a lot of these reps aren't going to work out.
Story of my life.
Yeah, exactly. The story of all of our lives.
Yeah. If you're in business, that is the story of your life for sure.
And I got to jump soon, but the one thing I remember that made a big impact on me was I grew up playing a lot of tennis. And Roger Federer, if you don't know who he is, one of the best tennis players in the world.
Yep.
He came out and he said this very profound thing. He was like, you know, like, I'm going to get the numbers wrong. But he was like, you know, I won 60% of all the games I ever played. And that's why I have all the titles I do. It's like, but I only won 48% of all the points I ever played, which means that he lost 52% of the points. That means he lost more than he won, but he won the ones that mattered. And I think that is such a perfect analogy of life.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you're not comfortable losing most of the time so that you can get to the point where you're able to win the points that matter, that is really the difference at the end of the day.
100%. Right there on the board, you must invest in loss.
Yeah.
I write that up there for my guys.
Yeah.
That's so funny you're saying that right now.
Yeah.
It's true. If we're not willing to lose, we're never going to win.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I think we can leave it right there, dude. This was incredible.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Yeah. I had so much fun. This is great.
Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram. You can find me on Alan Huynh. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just look for Alan Huynh. Feel free to send me a connection. More than happy to connect. More than happy to chat. But yeah.
Cool. And I'll do all your stuff in the description as well. So
Awesome, man.
we can reach out. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it again. Thanks so much.
Of course, it's a pleasure.